My name is Tamás Kádár. I work in a translation company and I do all sorts of things there. But that doesn't really matter right now. In my free time, I play around with whatever interesting language, framework, whatever interesting comes in my way. And 3 years ago, I've had this idea. There's this Hungarian webpage I'm pretty sure everyone used here at some point. It's called Netpincér, NetWaiter, and you can basically order food from it. And there was this feature that they had missing. Basically, I wanted to find out that which caterer was the fastest one to my location. So if I wanted to eat something really quick, I wanted to have to order, well, not from the quickest one, but one of the quickest ones. So what I figured, I would write a bookmarklet that will sort them by average delivery time, because every time you order, you can rate it. So for example, they promise everything between 90 and 120 minutes, and then you can rate it and it says the average is 110 minutes. So I've created this bookmarklet, and then 3 years later I've created another one, this time for another website. But let's step back for a minute. How many people here use bookmarklets every day? Okay, that's a good number. The shortest description of a bookmarklet is a self-contained JavaScript application that's usually activated from the bookmark bar, hence the name. And there are two primary use cases. One is what I'm going to talk about today, which is modifying third-party sites to our own liking. And the other one is basically sending content from one site to another. The second ones are actually much more popular, and I can show a few examples. Well, they're user scripts, so kind of, I guess. That's a fuzzy line, because Monkey, I guess bookmarklet counts like user scripts. But for example, the sharing kind of bookmarklets work the way that you just select your text, press this button. This is the press this button that you get with every single WordPress installation. So you select the text, press the button, and here you get a window, and if I say publish, it will be published in my blog. What I use every day is the posters sharing button, which works pretty much the same way, except it opens in a frame, and you can add your comment, and then you can share it. Or I could use the Instapaper, which I'm pretty sure most of you have heard about, or not. No, Instapaper is a service for saving long articles to read it later. There is a competing service called Read It Later that does the same, and Safari has a built-in feature called Reading List, and so on and so on. So I press Instapaper, and it will save the article, and if I go into my account, then I will have a nice list of all the long stuff I want to read on my Kindle, or on the internet, or my iPad, or whatever. Anyways, these are the kind of bookmarklets I'm not going to talk about today. The ones I'm going to talk about modify third-party web pages for your own benefit. So going back to this example, I wanted to sort it by average delivery time. So I did what everyone would do. I would fire up a Firebug or developer console. I don't remember because it was 3 years ago. But I would fire up a console and start playing around, start parsing the numbers, then reordering the whole thing. And in the end, I would have this. After a few seconds, it will be sorted by average delivery time. So it starts with 35 minutes, and then 39, and so on and so on. This was pretty much the first serious thing I wrote in JavaScript, so I'm not very proud of the code, but it still works. But it had a number of shortcomings. First of all, it was a simple file, and the installation instructions, I've put it on the internet, was that just take the file, put it in JavaScript unifier, and then put it in a bookmarklet by hand, which is not very convenient, and there's no way to track if I have any users, and so on and so on. I had no way to update it unless I put out another blog post saying, hey, this is the new version, do the whole dance, and put it in your bookmark bar one more time with the new code. So basically, if I hover over this, you will see the entire code. And that's not very useful. But I've created this, and it worked, and they actually responded and said they will put it on their list. And I've actually created two bookmarklets. One was this one, which sorted things by delivery date. And the other one was a much shorter one that filtered all the caterers that had happy hours. And that actually became a built-in feature a few months later. So I guess they were useful for something. Anyways, 3 years later, this site opened. Rucola is basically a book sharing service. You upload your books. You don't need anymore. You don't want any more to give away, and you get points for that. And for those points, you can grab books from others. How do you upload the book? Very simply, you just search for the book, and yeah, you just say it has a very weird terminology that doesn't translate into English at all. But you pass Rucola, and this means that you have this book and you want to give it away. Anyways, it's a really cool website, and it launched a few months ago, and they have loads of books now, about 85,000. And fortunately, they have collections. Books are sorted by genre. So, for example, you have foreign language books, or you have crime or fantasy or sci-fi, and so on and so on and so on. But there was one big shortcoming, and that is until a few days ago, because the bookmarklet I'm going to talk about became a built-in feature last week, ironically. But until a few days ago, you had no way to browse the books, browse only the books that were available. So, for example, right now on the screen we have 10 books, but none of them are available. Instead, these are books that are on people's wish lists, because everyone can have a wish list, and if someone uploads that book, you get an email that, hey, someone uploaded that book, you might want to grab it. But I really wanted to see only the books that I could grab right now, so like going into a bookstore and just seeing what's available. So I've decided to create a bookmarklet that would filter these and show me only the books that are available. And so I did the same thing again, fire out developer console, and started playing around, figured out pretty quickly how to remove the ones that are not available, and then a few more lines to fix the layout, and a few more lines to handle the fact that there are multiple pages. And after that, basically I had a working version. I'm the kind of person who just jumps in and writes the minimum viable code that will work, and then fix up all the miscellaneous stuff later. So about half a day later, I had a working version that kind of looked like this. I'm going to reload this. Nope. Here. I'm going to close this, and this is version 1. It removed all the books that are not available, and we have a shiny next button. And I press it, then it loads the next page with the available books. Then I press it again, and so on and so on and so on. And it worked. But I've made a few mistakes. When I was releasing it, I just put out a blog post that, hey, I have this. If you want it, you can use it. And here comes the actual part of my talk, which will talk about all the shortcomings the first version have and all the stuff I've learned because of that. So I did do a few things right the second time. First of all, I've used the loader. And that's really important because obviously if you put your entire bookmarklet code into one huge link, there will be no way to update it. There will be no way to track statistics, and so on and so on. So I've used a simple loader, which you can see right here. It's pretty basic stuff. And the first thing I ran into that for some reason WordPress hates bookmarklets. If you try to embed this code into a post and then post it, instead of the code, you will have JavaScript colon void 0. So you have an empty statement. I have no idea why. I've Googled around and I wasn't alone. Eventually, I figured out the right way to embed this loader into my post, which was this, which basically meant first remove all the apostrophes from the link, and for the single space, use the escape versions. And this is the only format and way that I could embed it in a WordPress post. Obviously, if you have a different engine or you just put it out in an HTML, you won't have this problem. But if you want to embed it in WordPress, like I did it, and I got lost in my tabs, but I'm going to show it here. So here is the install page, and here is the actual bookmarklet, and you can see on the bottom of the page that it has the right code. But for example, if I put these between apostrophes, it won't work. Even if I escape the apostrophes here and so on, I've tried everything, and this is the only format that worked. So this may be a niche problem, but nevertheless, it was a problem I ran into when I tried to publish it. So I wanted to share it.
I think it's WordPress security.
Yeah, it's something security related, probably to protect from XSS or something like that. Anyways.
And he found the bug.
And I found a bug in it that let me embed bookmarklets. Anyways, I've released it in a long post, and suddenly I had users, which I didn't really count on, because to this day I'm not sure that anyone besides myself used my bookmark previous one for NetBeans Air, but for this one I had up to 50 users per day. So suddenly I had users, and suddenly I had a bunch of problems. The first one was that it worked perfectly in Firefox and worked perfectly in Chrome, but it wouldn't load at all in Internet Explorer. And I'm going to show you why. It's for a very simple reason. I'm going to turn on the developer console. Oh, it's just slow. Yes. And I'm going to navigate to collection. Yay. No. Let's just wait. And it should load sometimes in the next century. Come on. Of course, I've had a Wi-Fi problem a few minutes before the presentation, and that's biting me back in my back right now. Okay, I guess we'll skip the live demonstration, but I can show you the error message I get when I try to load it into Internet Explorer. I get this error, and it basically said, because I figured that since the code was already on GitHub, and every time I push the code, I can update it for everyone, I would just use row.github.com that just gives you the plain text version. And it turns out that it works in Firefox and Chrome, but Internet Explorer blocks it do some security stuff. So I had to move the whole thing to my own hosting. And that had a few problems. And that was a problem because I already had users that were loading it from GitHub. And I suddenly had to move everyone to the new site, to my new hosting. And they had to update the bookmarklet by hand. So I had to force them. So what I did is that I've replaced the original script with a simple migration script, which looks like this. It's very simple. It says it will put out an overlay that says, hey, this bookmarklet has moved. Click here for the new version and remove the old one. And it kind of looks like this. And it loads the new version, but you will still get the nag dialog So eventually everyone will just move because it will become annoying. So yeah, you get this nice dialogue that we have a new version and you have to update. I only had to do this once, and since it's on my own host, I haven't had problems with this ever since, and it works in all 5 browsers right now. So that was the first lesson, I guess, that I had to learn, that always use your own hosting, because you will run into stuff like this when, for example, you need the right MIME type, or it just won't work. And this brings us to our next issue, which is caching. Browsers cache everything, so I had to make sure that they won't cache my bookmarklet. And the smart thing would have been to add this in the loader script. So in the loader script, it would say yada 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 .js plus new date, and it would load the new version every time. But I didn't do that, so I had to come up with another way, and that was basically the server-side way, which is to put it in my Node.js configuration that basically don't cache this file ever. Because if I update, I had issues with certain browsers.
Maybe have an expired tag for 1 hour a day or something, then the user wouldn't have to download it.
Yeah, that works, but since it's about 1 kilobyte, it doesn't really matter. But yeah, it does make sense to make it something more sensible than to just say don't cache this ever. So right now, if I check the headers, it will say that cache control no cache and expires right now. So I've migrated all the users, and it worked in all the browsers. And like I said before, I'm the kind of guy who just jumps in and goes along until I have the working version and think about all the other stuff later. So I fired a JSLint, and it turned and it gave me this. Every line that's underlined has an issue with it. And even after I say this and give a few sensible options, I still had to fix a lot of stuff. For example, I forgot the radix from parsent every single time. And so, yeah. So anyway, that's probably common sense in the JavaScript world, but always use JSLint because it can actually show you a bunch of problems you haven't thought of. I've decided that for the only thing that was missing from this bookmarklet was infinite scrolling, and that came into the second version. And it basically looks like this. Here's the site, yeah. And it has a few interesting things in it. For example, it has recursion. It will load the next page until there is at least 1 row of new books. So you have somewhere to scroll. Because the first time, what I didn't think about is that what if that you don't have enough books on the first page to scroll? And if you don't have enough books on the first page to scroll, you have no one to scroll and no way to trigger the infinite scrolling. Except if you're on macOS 10.7 or 8, because they have this nice elastic scrolling. and that does trigger the scroll. So I haven't figured this out for days until somebody wrote me who had a very large screen with large resolution that, hey, I can't go past the first page because I have nowhere to scroll. And so I had to change it to check if there's anywhere to scroll, and if there isn't, it just starts loading more and more, and it loads until there's enough to scroll. And with that, I could put the code into a nice little closure. Before that, I couldn't because I had this link I had to call every time. But now it's in a nice closure, and it won't mess with the rest of the page. The last thing I want to talk about, one more thing. Infinite scrolling, do-it-yourself infinite scrolling is actually very easy. I didn't want to use another plugin and load yet another JavaScript, so I figured I would just do it myself, and I found a very nice Stack Overflow page that had a good example, and there will be a link in it in the outline I will share. But basically, the infinite scrolling code is this, and it's pretty much that simple.
You should maybe add a timeout because if the user is calling them, this will be triggered in every pixel.
No, because I have the isLoading variable that's set to true every time I call load more. So that's why there is the isLoading checking, so it doesn't go into an infinite loop. And to check if it's scrollable, it's basically just one line. So the last thing I wanted to talk about is analytics. Now that I had it on my own server, I had access to my access.log from Nginx. And of course, I've started looking around, and I've started noticing a few things. The first thing was that people didn't know how to install the bookmarklet. I had a whole paragraph explaining it, but nevertheless, they just didn't know, and what they were doing was just clicking on it and then wondering why is there nothing happening. So in the last version, there's a new feature which says, hey, it doesn't work this way. It's actually pretty much hard-coded. It checks the location, and if it's called on the installation page, it will give you an alert that, no, it doesn't work that way. And I've also put up a picture that had a lot that showed the people how to install it. Because of the nature of the site, I've had a lot of non-technical users, so I was even thinking about making a video, and that would probably have been useful too. But nevertheless, this was the first thing I have seen because I started because I was looking through access.log and was checking the referrer, and I was seeing the referrer was this site and not Rucola, and so I had to fix this. Now, I really wanted to measure how many users I had. Of course, I couldn't get a really accurate measure, but I could always measure the unique IP addresses, and that's pretty simple. You just cat the access log file. The first grep is for the file, the second one is for the referrer, the third one is for the day. The fifth one selects the first column, which is the IP address, and then sort unique and count the lines, and it will give me 0 for some reason. Yep, this one works. So I could always check it by hand how many users I had. But later on, I figured I would like to have at least a graph. So I wrote this very simple Ruby application, very simple, very crude actually, that uses the Google Charts API and creates an image. I've also put this up in GitHub, and it will be in the notes. The result looks something like this. So it gives me a nice chart, and I guess that's not useful, but if you're like me and you like to track all this stuff, it's
The dates are backwards.
Yeah, because the size is limited, I had to limit the labels. So it's October and then September, and the days are backward because, well, like I said, it was a quick and crude program, but nevertheless it worked. And there's actually a third way, and there's a fourth and fifth, and there are tons of applications for analyzing log files, but I found a really cool one. It's called GoAccess. You cat in the file and you filter it and you press enter, and it will give you some really nice statistics. Unique visitors per day, requested files, which is kind of broken, requested static files, which is surprisingly 99.98% file wanted. It will give me the top 6 refers, or I can filter by day in the command line, and then it will only give me statistics for the day, and the errors, and the operating system statistics, and browser statistics. So that's what I was talking about, that everyone is using Firefox and Chrome and nobody is using Internet Explorer. So the only benefit I had from this migration is that now I have nice statistics. That's about it, I guess.
And you know that now you really shouldn't even care about
Yeah, the bottom line is that you shouldn't care about Internet Explorer at all. But no, the bottom line is that obviously you will always use a loader for the bookmarklets when you're releasing it. So just a shim that loads the actual script from your own page. Obviously test it on all the browsers. The most important thing I think is to actually track the users and track their behavior, so you can find stuff like I did, which is that they didn't know how to install it, and without watching the logs I would never even thought of that. And there are these weird quirks like embedding in WordPress is very problematic. There's one thing I forgot, and I will show you because it's so ugly that I just cannot show it. It goes back to the very first part of my talk, the netpincer script. So this script basically takes out all the this is a huge table. And what my script does is first takes out all the rows with indicators, sorts them, and then puts them back in DOM. However, when I was trying to do that, I would get a blank page. And I would get a blank page because of this as soon as it loads, which is not very fast. At all. I guess they don't want me to show the dirty stuff. waiting. Oh, come on. They really don't want me to show the really bad stuff. Oh, yeah, I think I know what the problem is. Okay, it's loaded. Then it's view source. Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. um, I have no idea why isn't this working, but I'm going to change the browser now. Of course. Yes, finally. Sorry. The search is so slow because they have so many of them. The whole page is littered with document.writelines, and when I was reinserting the nodes, they basically fired and rewrote the whole page into one big nothing. So I had to add in an extra step. So when I removed them, I also had to remove this script, so I could actually put all these caterers back. I think this is bad enough to show, but this is the kind of weird stuff that you can. This is the kind of weird stuff you can run into if you are playing around with third-party pages. That's it. I'm pretty sure I've missed something, but it doesn't matter now. Any questions?
I have one.
Okay.
Why do you use extensions, like Chrome extensions?
For the first version, for any version, first of all, the first version, I've actually started developing it as a Chrome extension, but then I figured it would be much easier to make it cross-browser by a bookmarklet. Also, I was too cheap to pay $5 for the Chrome developer program or something. And by the time that I could make an extension of it, 2 million people were using the bookmarklet anyway. But that's actually that's actually a valid question. And if I would do it again, I would make it an extension because it's probably easier on the users. But of course, it's a bit more work for me. And for example, because I had to write it for 5 browsers, but in the practical sense, since everyone was using Firefox and Chrome, I would probably just have to make the Firefox and the Chrome version. But yeah, and for what it's worth, the whole thing is about 80 lines of code. So I'm not sure that qualifies for a whole extension.
at least you will know how to make a.
But at least I will know how to make an extension. So maybe for my next project, I will do an extension to learn all the ins and outs. But this project for me was really good to learn all kinds of stuff about bookmarklets. And yeah, like I said, last week they pretty much made it a built-in feature. So now they have the switch, and you click on it, and you basically have what I wrote, minus the infinite scrolling thing. So I may release a version this week that will only have the infinite scrolling if anyone wants that. One more thing about the infinite scrolling. I could have made it better if I would have added HTML5 push state. So I could actually track which page the user were on. Because if you turn on infinite scrolling and scroll a few pages and then reload, you will just start at the beginning. Anybody else? No. Okay, then thank you.